Good evening, everyone. I'm Lou Thaler, former Vice Mayor of Sunny Isles Beach and President of the North Dade Political Association. Before we start, I would like to take this time to thank the Commission of Sunny Isles Beach, the police force, and Chris Russo, the city manager, and his staff who helped us put this whole thing together. And
well, lady and gentlemen, if you would have a seat and let's get ready to rumble. No, it's not going to be a rumble. It's going to be a civilized discussion. And first I want to say thank you very much to the North Dade Political Association for sponsoring this. I wish this room were full, but I'm glad for everybody who is here. And I want to say good evening to all of the fine ladies and gentlemen who are up here, all of whom I have known and covered for a number of years. And I want to also acknowledge that I know that Mayor Bud Scholl is not here this evening, but Vice Mayor Larissa Shutta is here. Nice to see you. And my old and very good friend, Sally Heyman, our commissioner from here. Well, I'm old too, Sally. And another legendary figure, David Samson, former Mayor Dave Samson. Great to see you. Norman Edelcup. Norman, forgive me. What a egg on my face. I do apologize. So the format here is ridiculously simple. Each of the candidates is going to make a 1-minute opening statement, and then when we get to the Q&A, they will have 1:15 to answer. If they mention another candidate in any regard, that candidate will have 45 seconds to respond, and then there will be a minute closing. We drew numbers, Roman numerals, very classy. For the order, and actually, since we have 5 candidates instead of 6, sorry that Nicole is not here, we're going to begin with Miami-Dade Commissioner Steve Bovo. Steve, you have a minute to tell us why you're running.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity. And as I came to the conclusion of why I wanted to run for mayor, it dawned on me that in many occasions, county government has moved away at times from a dialogue that includes the taxpayer and the business owners. Oftentimes, many of the decisions we make in our county are driven where the taxpayer and the business owner are the last to be consulted with. We have a great county. We have a great county that many people want to come and live in, but we have challenges. No doubt we have challenges. We have challenges on transportation, on housing, on environmental issues. And I've decided to run because I'm committed to working on these issues. I've been doing it while I've been on the Board of County Commission. I've done it while I was the chair of the Board of County Commission. And I would commit to, as mayor, to help find solutions in a transparent way that helps us move the dialogue of our county. We need to plan a county not for the next 4 or 5 years, but for the next 25 years. And that's what I commit to do as your next mayor. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now we want to hear from Commissioner Daniela Levine Cava, who is from South Dade, drove up here from the Pinecrest area. Commissioner Levine Cava.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you very much to all of you for being here today and Sunny Isles for welcoming us. I'm Daniela Levine Cava. I am running to change history. I'm running to change our future in Miami-Dade County. I have been for 5.5 years serving as county commissioner, and I've tackled traffic like all of us. I've tackled the transit and the need to expand it, and I've tackled affordability. Those are critical issues of our time. But I've also tackled the status quo. And unfortunately, Miami-Dade County is known throughout the country for insider control. We're known for corruption. And that is the very sad truth. And ladies and gentlemen, when I am mayor, that will end. So I am not going to lead with yesterday's solutions. That has brought us the challenges we're dealing with today. And I am going to bring a clear vision, bold plans, so that we can together deal with the future and usher in a new era. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, we want to hear from a former Miami-Dade mayor, Alex Penelas.
Thank you, Michael, and to Robert and to all of you for coming here today. I reminisce today because I was proud to be a part, Norman, of Sunny Isles Beaches Incorporation back in 1997. I actually do remember Dave Samson. Michael, he was an incredible leader. Lynn Danheiser, so many others who played a role. And I think Sunny Isles Beach is really a shining example of how local government should work and how the county government should be focused on big regional issues, which we have plenty of, running airports and seaports, a crumbling water and sewer system, environmental challenges, and we should let local communities make local decisions. And it's exactly for that reason that I've decided to offer myself up again for public service. I had the tremendous honor and privilege to serve in the public sector for 17 years, 8 as your county mayor. I've been now in the private sector for 16 years, and I understand how the private sector is impacted by decisions that government makes. And I think it's the combination of those experiences, right? And the fact that I'm doing this, not because I need to, not because I have term limits and I need the next job in the political ladder. I'm doing this because I want to do it. I want to serve the community. And I think that liberates me to do just what's right and nothing else. So I look forward to dealing with the many challenges that we face and serving as your mayor again come November. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you. And now a really extraordinary guy who came from Haiti, has built a huge life and career, former chairman of the County Commission for 8 years, Commissioner Jean Monestime. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Thank you, Michael. Good evening, everyone. It's quite a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for showing up for this wonderful gathering, this wonderful debate. I'm running for mayor to expand on some of the successes we had when I was chairman of the County Commission. Miami-Dade County is faced with many challenges. On some occasions, we are the victim of our own successes. Reasons why is because everybody wants to live here. Everybody loves this place. Everybody wants to be here. And what has that done for us? We have traffic gridlock. We have the cost of living that have constantly increasing. And we have so many other issues in our means. And to do that, I believe we need to work together to build a more sustainable Miami-Dade County. Sustainable, I mean, by building a stronger Miami-Dade County financially, where both wealthy individuals and working individuals can work. And also a sustainable Miami-Dade County where we actually work toward solving the traffic issue long-term and investing in our green space. And also a sustainable Miami-Dade County where we expand our economy by just investing in new industries. Because we all have watched the stock market today and know that we're going to be impacted by that, seriously impacted by that, because we are a tourist economy. But if we challenge those issues, we'll have a better Miami-Dade County in the near future.
Thank you. And now we want to hear from someone whom I have known for 30 years, a former mayor of Miami, former Miami-Dade and a Miami-Dade commissioner, Javier Suarez.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Suarez.
And thank you for being here once again, leading this parade of very worthy candidates. Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner Weinberg, and Senator Silver over there somewhere, former Representative Hardiman. This is quite a gathering that we have here today, and I thank you all for attending, for setting it up. This week, I had a tragedy in my family. a nephew that passed away. And what I want to say about him, and I thank all the commissioners who have extended, and Mayor Penelas who extended condolences to me. But what I want to say about Patrick is that he believed very much that everyone in this country and in this city should have a decent roof over their heads, a decent job, affordable housing that Commissioner Levine, Cava, and I have pushed for, and the rest of the commissioners. And also transportation that is affordable and that is effective. And for that reason, I have put forth the idea of having free public transportation in Miami-Dade County. I'll be developing that theme as we go. It's doable. Kansas City has recently announced that it's doing it. It's the largest American city to do it. And we need to do that. We need to get the people out of their cars, and we need to make affordable to the working class and the middle class public transportation. That's what the word public means. And so we'll carry out these ideas as we go forward, and I thank you for this invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm very delighted that the other candidate for mayor has arrived here, Nicole Barley. Good evening, Ms. Barley. Great to see you. You have a minute to make an opening statement.
Okay, good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to apologize for my lateness. I was just released from the hospital today. The doctor wanted me to stay admitted, but I begged him to release me so I can make it to this debate. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Monique Nicole Barley. I am 36 years old. I am an entrepreneur and a consumer law representative. In 2014, I decided to run for office while helping my father, Mr. Roy Hardeman, with his many campaigns. In May of 2016, it was placed on my heart to run for Miami-Dade County Mayor. I am looking to bring a better transit system, a better public safety system, and most importantly, an affordable place to live. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Well, let's begin with some questions. We can do this fairly quickly, and let me begin, Commissioner Levine Cava, with you, and I would like to hear from all of you on this subject. I mean, here we are with a huge public health crisis right at our doorstep, which has huge economic ramifications when the head of the CDC says you shouldn't, anybody, especially older people, should not get on a cruise ship. So in terms, if you were the mayor today, what would you be doing to reassure the people of Miami-Dade County that they have access to testing, public health, to doctors, and to the right kind of counsel in this terribly difficult period?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Clearly, this is what is dominating all of our hearts and minds. And it is obviously a huge health issue, but it's also an economic crisis that we're facing here. So I would start with the fact that it's very unfortunate that the federal government has really not allowed the local government to step up and do its job. So, for example, testing. There's no reason why we can't be testing aggressively locally, why we had to wait for the CDC. Other hospitals around the country have received permission to do that, and I would aggressively pursue that measure. I think this is what people want to know. They want to know that if there is any concern, that there is access to testing. Secondly, we need to make sure there's no financial barrier to testing. And we know that many people are without health insurance. Even if they have it, the co-pays and deductibles are so high that they are stuck with a very large bill if they do pursue the private treatment. And then we also have so many employees, as many as a third of the employees, who are not receiving paid sick leave. I do have legislation on this item. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to pass it. Certainly on the county's dime, we should not be forcing people to make a choice.
Yeah. Mayor Penelas, we have seen Mayor Jimenez out and making his appearances, trying to reassure people. If you were the mayor right now, or if you become the mayor, how visible would you be on this? What would you say? What would you do that has not been said or done?
Michael, I think most of the residents of Miami-Dade County will recall that during my years as mayor, I was very visible when there were threats to our community. 22 named storms, fine air crash, Gianni Versace, Elian Gonzalez, 2000 recount. I could go on and on and on with the crises that we face. So I think I offer a very unique perspective, have tremendous experience, and I think there's two components. It's the message, and it's the delivery of the message. On the issue of the message, it has to be driven by experts and by the science. You've got to have the right people around you, making sure that they are giving you the right information. This is not a time for politics. This is not a time to be in front of cameras and trying to attend every press conference in town because it's election season. This is the time to listen to the experts. And number two, you've got to have the right messenger. And the messenger needs to be someone who's unalarming, who's soothing, but is transparent and speaks with a united voice. I think there's too many people talking about this issue. The example we saw last week, where on Tuesday, the county mayor said that nothing was going to change. There was no cancellations, to only then have the city mayor on Wednesday canceling Ultra, and on Thursday, Calle Ocho, which he had every right to do, to me signifies a major disconnect. A major disconnect. And a lot of it has to do, obviously, because of the rub that exists right now between the county and the city mayor. So as mayor, I would be a leader. I would be a leader. I would take responsibility. I would be the communicator in chief of the message, as I did for many, many years during hurricanes and many other crises that we face in this community.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Bovo, you know very well that many of our great institutions, the Arts Center among them, are paid for with tourist development tax bond money. And if people don't get on cruise ships, if they don't come to South Beach, if they don't come to our hotels and restaurants, this community is going to be, they don't come to Sunny Isles Beach, it's going to be in deep trouble. So how would you address that? What would you do?
No doubt that's, I think, at the heart of this debate. As leaders, we want to make sure and reassure residents that that government is looking out for their best interests. And I think, for the most part, what we don't want is to create an alarmist situation where folks start losing, confidence in what government is telling them. Alex was just kind of talking a little bit about communicator in chief. There wasn't a press conference he wouldn't run away from when he was mayor. And here's the problem now. When you try to become the story, instead of letting the experts in the community come out and speak to what needs to be, and make sure that you then transfer that information in a concise kind of way. I lament the fact that we have a disconnect between our mayors in Miami and the county. That's unfortunate because it sends a mixed message. Why are you canceling on one end and why are you not canceling on the other? And I think as mayor, what you want to do is make sure that you speak with a clear voice, that you get all the major players in our community, including the mayors of various municipalities, that we're all on the same page and speak as one. But unfortunately, that did not happen in this case. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think it's going to lead to more confusion as we move forward.
Mayor Penelas, you have 45 seconds to rebut that, make a comment.
No, I don't think a rebuttal is necessary. I think the people of this county know exactly how I performed in the eye of natural crises. I will remind those on the dais a little bit of history. And the reason voters in 1992 went to an executive mayor form of government, Michael, and you will remember this, we were on the heels of Hurricane Andrew, and there was zero leadership, nada, nothing, okay? Steve Clark, dear friend, may he rest in peace, nowhere to be found. It took Kate Hale, the then, you remember, Michael, the then emergency manager for Miami-Dade County, to come out and say, where is the cavalry? 1992. And it was on the heels of that disaster that the voters of Miami-Dade County said, wait a minute, when we need one leader, we need a countywide leader who will be responsible and who will be held responsible in a moment of crisis. So, we need to learn a little bit from our history and why we went to this form of government so that we do have one single voice leading the community and not all these divergent opinions with a lot of people, quite frankly, who are just unprepared to speak.
Yeah. Commissioner Suarez, clearly your son Francis is the mayor of Miami, and was he in conjunction with city leaders who decided to cancel Ultra or postpone it, and also Calle Ocho was canceled.
You ruined my punchline, Michael.
So give us your take on better cooperation, as Commissioner Bovo says, between the cities, all of the cities, and the leadership of the county.
Yeah, Francis was the president of the League of Cities, so he obviously knows how to collaborate with the cities. I agree with Commissioner Levine Cava and her substantive prescriptions. I thought she stated them very well. Having the tests available, making them affordable, not letting the federal government impede what we can do locally. On delivery, I agree with Alex. I mean, that was going to be my punchline. I was going to say Jimenez actually did pretty well, except for that faux pas on trying to, try to tell the city what to do or not to do with the events held in the city. I thought Andrew Cuomo was very good for reasons that Commissioner Bovo stated. He seemed to leave to the experts, what belongs with the experts, and sort of not try to do too much of the conversation. I thought the best was the mayor of Miami, but then of course I do have I have a little preference there. The thing about it, I kept thinking if I was mayor of Dade County, well, first of all, I would get along with the mayor of Miami quite fine. But besides that, it is a technically difficult issue. I mean, we've dealt with things like, hurricanes, and we've gotten used to that. And in my case, civil disturbances, and I think people remember what I did in 1989. But this is a pretty complex topic, and I'm having to go back and forth in Google try to figure out how this all works. Certainly not saying something that you don't know anything about is very important, and being everywhere.
Yeah. Jean Monestime, I've seen you in a leadership role at the Miami-Dade County Commission. What about in a larger role in a crisis like the one we seem to be facing right now?
Actually, Michael, I think what I would do as the mayor of the county is what I've done when I was chairman of the county commission, is to listen to my colleagues a whole lot more. I think the competition at the table is that every leader in our community, every mayor wants to be the one speaking and then wants to be the one heard. And it's good to see that there is a collective understanding right now of a phrase that I've been coining the last 3 months, that we need to harness our collective power. Our collective power resides in the fact that we have 34 municipalities, we have other civic leaders in our community, and we have business leaders in our community. And as the person with the most power in this region, you have to be the biggest, the number one listener. Address these individuals, reach out to them. Why should you be reaching out to them? Because they hand you over this power, you shouldn't automatically become the most important person in town. You should become the most sensitive person in town, the one who's willing to listen, to go the extra mile to bring about solution. If I were in this position today, three things I would have done. First of all, make sure that I have almost everyday briefing from the experts. The second thing is, after hearing to the medical expert, convene the county commission to know whether they would grant me a little bit more emergency power than what the mayor currently have, in terms that of what my spending ability would be if we have to make decisions on behalf of the most vulnerable individuals. The most vulnerable individuals. Commissioner Cava just mentioned some of them. You have people who don't have insurance here. And the third thing I would do, Michael, is convene a meeting with all the head of all the private hospitals, and also the head of the Public Health Trust and his team, to make sure that we have an understanding that if this crisis hit us hard, that no one is turned back from any one of our hospitals. Because if any single individual does not receive the right kind of treatment, we are all impacted by that. Yeah. We all may be affected by that.
We understand. All right, well, Monique and Nicole, Barley, all the other competitors here, your opponents have had some deep experience in elective office. I mean, I know your father has, but you have not. So how would you handle this kind of a crisis?
Certainly. First and foremost, I do know that there is a disconnect between the mayor and the residents of Miami-Dade County. I also believe that there is a disconnect between the commissioners and their districts as well. So we're not going to leave that part out either. I will take the politics out of it because we're dealing with the livelihoods of human beings. And I will work closely with the experts as well. This is a federal government issue, and the only way that we can take care of that is working closely with the experts.
Okay, let's move on to another topic, and I see our fine police chief and officers there. Thank you for your service, gentlemen. It's not so true in Sunny Isles Beach, although you've had gunfights here and you have to deal with people, thugs and other people who illegally have weapons. Mayor Penelas, what would you do as mayor to try to reduce the epidemic of gun violence? I know there are limitations legally from the legislature has prevented local municipalities, counties from passing laws, but you can still use the bully pulpit. What would you do?
Well, you could do more than the bully pulpit. Michael, if you recall, when I was elected mayor, we had a horrible violent crime problem in Miami-Dade County. And as the leader of this community, I allotted an unprecedented amount of resources to our police department, not because I knew how to do it, but I listened to the experts, I listened to our police director, and they told me to invest in robbery intervention details, tactical narcotics teams, anti-gang units, tourist protection programs, and we did all of that. Violent crime went down 44% when I was mayor of Miami-Dade County. But we did more. I did use that bully pulpit, and among other things, helped pass a constitutional amendment that opened that very small window that allowed us to close the gun show loophole here in Miami-Dade County, which I was alarmed to learn over the last few years that it had not been enforced for the last 10 years here in Miami-Dade County. And I did more. I also sued gun manufacturers in what was really something way ahead of my time, 15 years ago when we did it, or 20 years ago when we did it, because at that time, most courts were not recognizing products liability cases against gun manufacturers, and although our cases were dismissed, now you have seen a series of these lawsuits having success throughout the country. So yes, there's a lot that we can do and must do. I say this often. We should be ashamed of ourselves that if you are a young black male in this community living in certain neighborhoods, you have less likelihood of reaching adulthood. We as a community, I don't care where you live, what the color of your skin is, we should be ashamed of that. And we've got to address that issue.
Commissioner Bovo, as a defender of the Second Amendment, which I know you are, how do you strike a balance where you do not punish law-abiding owners of guns, but get them out of the hands of people who are mentally unwell or are criminals?
Well, first, let me say that while I was the chair of the Board of County Commission, we made gun violence an issue because we thought it was a travesty that children in our community could never reach their full potential over gun violence that was uncalled for. We supported efforts like the brown and blue operation to make sure that we had a collaboration between Miami-Dade County police officers and the city of Miami. And we believe we had a lot of success in that area. We also believe that you have to have economic opportunity. Folks have to have opportunities, not just handout, but real opportunities that could move up and above some of the depressions that we see in many of the communities. I also want to make clear, this is a community-wide issue. This is not one single community, because it's happening everywhere where gun violence seems to be the salvation or the way to solve problems among young people, and it's wrong. We've worked with the Circle of Brotherhood, which, by the way, today is their anniversary of their hunger strike, to bring attention to the violence in the community. Now, the problem is, in many of the cases, lack of economic opportunity makes a lot of these young guys basically turn to the gun as a way of dealing with society issues. Critical issues that government are not going to be able to fix, like homes where there is no father figure, period. Where a young boy, the way he's going to defend himself or man up is by trying to get a gun, by the way, which is illegal in most cases. So when we talk about the Second Amendment, yes, we should allow law-abiding citizens to be able to have guns. In most cases, those that are committing the crimes, these guns are not purchased in any kind of legal fashion. Another issue that we have in our community is that nobody sees anything. We have many instances in our community where gun violence happens and nobody saw anything. Yet if you talk to someone like Tangela Sears, she'll tell you, everybody in the neighborhood knows who pulled the trigger.
I'm going to have to jump in. You're out of time. But yes, because people are afraid to come forward for retaliation. Commissioner Levine, Cava, this is an issue dear to your heart, I know, trying to stem gun violence.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I've spent a lifetime working on strengthening our families and our communities just for this very purpose, to prevent this kind of violence in our community. I'm a social worker, I'm a lawyer, I've worked with children directly for decades. And I'd like to say very clearly, prevention is not taking a gun out of somebody's hands. Prevention is working with children and families from the outset to make sure that they feel supported, that they have productive activities, that they have a sense of hope for a brighter future. I'm not talking about people who, go off and shoot up movie theaters and things like that. I'm talking about the violence that happens each and every day on our streets here in Miami-Dade County. That is a travesty. And all of us, with our tears and our regrets, but not doing what we need to do to invest in giving these children a brighter future. So what would I do? I would work with the institutions that we have that are all working on their own plans. Our school board does not work with our Children's Trust or our Early Learning Coalition or our United Way. We do not have a unified plan for our children. So our children are left with fewer and fewer meaningful activities. They're left with families that are struggling to get by. Over half the people in this community can barely get by, can't make ends meet. But on the more tactical level, yes, we have to enforce the laws we have. We have laws about background checks. They had not been enforced. We have to do a gun trace study to understand where these guns are coming from. And we've sued the state legislature to make sure that we can locally make the kinds of laws that we think make sense here in Miami-Dade County.
Thank you. Commissioner Suarez, the Miami-Dade County Parks Department is a tremendous asset. And one of the things they do, which I admire the most, is after-school programs. And when these kids get out of school and they go to a county park, they're much less likely, obviously, to commit a crime or get in trouble. There is a proposal I have seen mentioned in the Herald today to create a special taxing district for Miami-Dade County parks. Would you favor that?
Special taxing district for Miami-Dade County parks. Wow, you came up with a new one on me. But I will say this. When the shooting took place at Francis Tucker Elementary, immediately I initiated what I call the envelopes of safety, quoting the school superintendent, and have funded, in combination with my son, 20 after-school programs. By the way, these should be free. The problem that we have with after-school programs is that many of them cost $8 per person, per child per day. I was telling one of the school board members about that, and she said, well, that's not much. And I go, yeah, right. If you have 4 or 5 kids, that's like $300 or $400 a month or whatever it adds up to. I commend, by the way, Commissioner Sally Heyman on the work that she's done with the diversionary mental health program, and Judge Leifman. I remember looking at statistics. I think that the commissioner gave us something like 3,500 mental health cases, of which 80% were the same 60 people over and over again. Clearly, those folks require some diversionary program. The city of Miami has also done shot spotters and Eyes of God and all kinds of surveillance programs. I agree with Commissioner Bovo. that, sometimes you have to do something symbolic, the hunger strikers. I've forgotten that this was the anniversary. I do remember that after a couple of weeks, I was begging them to stop the hunger strike, so I invited them to dinner at my house to celebrate my birthday, which was May 21st, if any of you are inclined to send me a gift. Make sure it doesn't exceed $25. In any case, all these things are important, and symbolic things are important. You know, one of the things that Mayor Suarez did in the city of Miami, I don't know if you remember, at the beginning of last year, we had a spate of killings in the inner city. And what he went and he did is he went out there and he ran I don't know how many miles with police officers and citizens and activists. And he said, this has got to stop. By the end of the year, they were down to the lowest homicide rate in the history of the city of Miami.
Yeah. Ms. Barley, what would you do? Obviously, as has been noted, the rate of violence, as Mayor Penelas mentioned, the rate of gun violence, especially against young black men, is the highest of any group, any cohort. What would you do as mayor to reduce this terrible toll of gun violence, not just in the black community, but throughout the community?
I do appreciate the buyback gun program. I believe that's a good program to start. Also, we have to figure out the root problem. You have to understand that putting a spay-neutering facility in the city of Miami or Miami-Dade County or Model City is not a good idea. We have to do real economic development, creating jobs so that the thugs, as we say, and the black young men don't have to have a reason to go out and sell drugs and have guns. So once we figure out and get to the root problem, then I believe that the gun violence will decrease.
Okay, let's move on. There's so many things we can discuss. And
Michael, may I?
John, did I miss you?
Yes, you have.
Weigh in. Let's hear from you. Sorry.
And this is probably the issue most important to my life because as a black man sitting here, and I had the opportunity and the privilege and the blessing to raise two young black males in America, here in Miami-Dade County. Thank God, both of them finished college and now are productive citizens of this county. Why is this different? This is different because it was the belief of my wife and I. There are two things that are true deterrent to crime. Beside having a strong family that stands by you and try to encourage you, it is first education, because the saying goes that it is more important to invest in children instead of having to fix broken men. So education is paramount. Second, it's opportunities. How is it that as an immigrant, as a 17-year-old, though that I had many schoolmates who were selling drugs and doing drugs and dealing with guns as a high school student, that I didn't follow them, beside the fear of my father, of course, who was not even here. It was the people who instilled in me that education is the most important thing. And that's one of the reasons why we're sitting here at this table. So we have to invest in the life of young people. We have to expand early childhood education. We need to make sure, as mayor, I will make sure that every qualified high school student get a full-time job during the summer. At least get a job during the summer. I say thank you to Commissioner Suarez, who co-primed the first youth summer job initiative with me when I was chairman of the board. And we started with about 100 youth per summer. Right now, we started with 1,300. Right now, I think I heard that it's nearing 9,000 or 10,000. And we had to fight to get the funding. So this is a very, very important issue. And the next thing is that we need to offer a certain level of equity to the people who live in the neighborhood where we invest. So meaning allow these people to have the first opportunity of getting a job from the investment that comes to this neighborhood, if they qualify. Because let me tell you why. In the early 80s, we all knew how blighted South Beach was. All right? But because of the opportunities there right now, the CRA that we talked about today and everything that happened there,
John,
enough jobs.
I'm going to have to jump in. We do have time limits, but we'll have more time for your comments. We've received some great questions from the audience. By the way, can I just say hello to my mayor, Enid Weisman, who is so tremendous, Mayor of Aventura. You do a fabulous job there, Mayor Weisman. Here's a question about Sunny Isles Beach that really speaks to the larger issue of climate change, sea level rise, and what communities like this are going to be looking at. Questioner says, Sunny Isles Beach is being affected by sea level rise and literally crumbling sea walls. Who should pay to fix this? The county, the city, the state? How are issues like sea level rise and encroaching waters and receding sand, what is the answer there? Mayor Penelas, why don't you take a crack at that?
Fantastic question, because I think it gets to the heart of this dilemma we face, and that is, how do we get the buy-in from the totality of this county that this is an issue? It's interesting because you hear the opinion makers and the pundits and the activists and obviously people on the coast talking about it, but the further west you go, it's not an issue that's front and center. People are talking about crime, they're talking about transportation. But the reality, Michael, is that the people of Sunny Isles Beach alone, or the people of any of these coastal cities alone, will not be able to bear the expense. Right. This has to be a region-wide effort. So we've got to do a better job, all of us do, whether we're the mayor or commissioner or local leaders, to let people know that climate change will affect all of us because it will impact jobs of people who work on Sunny Isles Beach but maybe live in Hialeah or in Kendall, right? It will impact businesses that have an impact throughout the county. So to answer the question specifically, no, I don't think this can be borne only by the residents of Sunny Isles Beach or by any singular community along in the line of sea rise challenges. It's an issue that has to be shared by all of us. Countywide, statewide, and I think there needs to be significant federal participation as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Levine, Cava, I mean, down in your neighborhood where you live in Southwest Miami-Dade, in fact, there are some flood zones in that area that are affected by sea level rise too, no matter how far inland you go. But would you say to your constituents who say, well, wait a minute, why should I pay for problem sea level rise on Sunny Isles Beach or Miami Beach or wherever, Surfside?
Well, water is our economy for all of us here. We share that, and unfortunately, cities have gone it alone because the county has not been a leader. And as mayor, we will work together. We will not have cities fending for themselves, going up with their own lobbyists to Tallahassee to get small projects. We'll work together to build up our infrastructure, not just seawalls, which we have along the coast, but as you say, the canal banks, all of our infrastructure is threatened, and it's because of years and years, decades of lack of investment, decades of deferred maintenance. That's why we have sewage spills right here in Oleta and at Hallover. All of these are things that were known to the county, and the can was kicked down the road. So it is essential that, as mayor, I will work to make sure that we're working together, that we're educating the public about the risks involved, and that that the county exercises the leadership, just like we did after Hurricane Andrew. We're the ones that came up with the new building code. We are the ones that need to take the lead in addressing infrastructure issues throughout the county.
Yeah. Steve Bovo, obviously, while you've been on the commission, Miami-Dade County has created a resilience officer. You and your fellow commissioners have made this a priority. What would you do about sea level rise as mayor of Miami-Dade? What more could you do to lead the effort?
Well, as chair, we did create the chairman's policy council with the direct intent to be able to talk about the issues that we were confronting that needed immediate attention, and sea level rise issues were front and center. We did participate with the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce for the first time ever with the chair's meeting on resiliency. We engage developers in our community because we believe that they should be at the table in this conversation and not be just the subject of whatever was being passed or introduced. Make no mistake about it, without a beach, without Everglades, there is no economy, there is no South Florida. So we need to be able to invest in beach renourishment. We need to address the issues of septic tank. That's why I support the effort by Representative Avila and Senator Diaz in Tallahassee that we should be using tourist dollars to help us with our infrastructure. They use our infrastructure, and the allure of coming into South Florida, the very essence of those tourists coming here, could be put in jeopardy if we don't address these issues in an aggressive fashion. But I think it goes just beyond just water issues. It also speaks to how do we build in the future? How do we move people in the future? And we need to have more synergy between housing, transportation, in order to be able to impact those issues of our environment.
Yeah, you've raised an interesting subject. I'm not an expert on this, but Representative Brian Avila, Senator Manny Diaz of the Hialeah area are proposing a bill that would essentially strip $25 million from the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau and spend it on water projects and some infrastructure. Commissioner Suarez, is that something you could support, or should they butt out?
This is the second time that you hit me with a tough question before anyone else.
It's because I have confidence in you.
Back to the first one. The diversion of monies that's going on in the county from things that are important, it's just awful. The squandering of resources. In the case of the Parks Department, I'm a member of the committee, and we pushed this year for additional funding. It took the chairman of the committee to use his own office monies to have surveillance in the parks. When you asked me about a special taxing district, I kept thinking, we've got an $8 billion budget or $9 billion budget, and we don't have even one manager for each of the 270 parks, let alone coaches, let alone assistant managers, et cetera. As I parked my car in the wrong parking lot as I got here, I ended up at a place which had a sign that said flooding area, use caution, the closest parking lot to here. And I'm sending that notice to, or that sign to my staff, because we follow sea level rise throughout the county. And I also corresponded with WLRN's Luis Hernandez, who had somewhat of an expert on sea level rise yesterday on his program. People have to be very careful with the data, and they also have to be careful not to do the wrong things. I'm fighting for the city of Miami, which did pass a GOB, general obligation bond, that included $192 million for resilience issues, not to build up seawalls in places where you should have a living shoreline, like Alice Wainwright Park. So we spend money, a lot of times, a lot of money in all the wrong ways, and it bears analyzing, and it bears being very much aware of the data and crunching the data. We do that almost on a weekly basis with the Rosenstiel School and McNulty, and I was glad to hear Commissioner Levine Cava the other day mentioned that one of the things that we're having a hard time grasping is to what extent our sea level rise issues are due to the slowing down of the Gulf Stream. And that's something else that, and that's why we gave $1.6 million to FIU and our water and sewer department to monitor and get back to us with real hard data.
Yeah. Ms. Barley, in your priorities, if you are mayor, where would sea level rise, climate change come? I mean, is it, we see in the story in the Miami Herald today about the poll done by the Knight Foundation, Miami Foundation, that it is one of the top 3 issues for the people of Miami-Dade County. Is it one of your top 3 issues?
Yes, well, Miami-Dade County have been trying to figure out how they want to tackle sea level rises for years, and I don't see any solutions to it. So I know in 2016, with my father's first year in office, he brought money home to the county for sea level rising. But to answer your question, I believe the county, state, and the federal should be responsible for the funding.
Okay. All right. I've got lots of other good questions here, and I will get to some of them. I do want to get to,
Michael, you forgot John again.
Monsieur Monestime
just we
is
did
feeling a
today.
little...
Very sorry. Commissioner Monestime, weigh in.
I think, like probably most of the members on this panel, I do not believe that Sunny Isles or Miami Beach alone should pay for a seawall if one must be built. The other thing is that I think we need to continue to believe and follow the science. And third, one of the decisions I would have to make quickly if I become mayor is to make sure that we retain James Murley as Chief Resiliency Officer in this county, because he's an expert in the field, and I don't think he's been empowered enough to do what's necessary to address this issue.
You would give him more power?
Oh, most
to
definitely,
act?
more power and a definitely larger budget so that he could have the tools and team necessary to properly advise us on this issue.
Yeah, thank you, and I beg your pardon. Let's move on to an issue that affects everyone, and that is traffic congestion and mass transit. Commissioner Bovo, this is really in your wheelhouse. You have made this one of your areas of expertise, and we've heard about $243 million approved for a South Dade Transit Way, and then also money, I guess, has been set aside or will be set aside for a mass transit line going up 27th Avenue to the stadium. But we see these, studies have been done for years. Where's the real progress? Where is the thing? Where's the bus? Where's the train?
Yeah, well, I would tell you that in another life, I want to come back as one of those folks that do studies, because there is a lot of money that goes into these studies. I want to preface this by first understanding that 50 years of poor planning have put us in the situation that we're in today. Traffic did not become a problem overnight. This problem has been gradually building over a course of time. And there's been a fundamental failure, I believe, in government at multiple levels that would allow development to continue without ever really baking in a corridor, a transit corridor. Now, take into account also that since we have developed car-friendly, rolling out buses throughout our entire community is not going to solve this issue either, because we don't have a bus culture, and it's just a matter of fact. Now, we could and we should look at our smart corridors and intensify the development along those corridors, because the only way we'll be eligible ultimately for federal funds is if you create the density leads to the ridership. That's why it was so important not to abandon the idea of rail, but let's be clear, every mile of rail is about $100 to $120 million per mile, and that's just construction. That's not operation and maintenance. It is prohibitive. And for those that will tell you something different, they're lying to you, plain and simple. The reality is that in order for us to build to where we want to go on transit, in order for us to be able to fulfill the visions that many have been promised, not by me, but by others, then we need to merge density and construction development along these corridors. Easier said than done, because many areas in our community may say, I don't want the development near me. Well, then we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth. The only way we get to a metro rail or a transit line to the stadium is development along that corridor that'll help feed it.
Right.
Same thing south, same thing west, same thing to the beach. Where it's worked, it shows itself. Dadeland, Brickell, Aventura, you have the development, you have the sustainability to be able to take your action there. Without a public-private partnership, it'll be very difficult to do, and let's be clear, let's be crystal clear. The half penny that we all pay was an overpromise that was never going to be fulfilled.
Mayor Penelas, in 2002, I'm one of the, 400,000 people who voted yes on a half penny for transportation, and that was your baby. You sold it, and you weren't in office to execute it, but the fact of the matter was most of that money went for operational expenses. Now, that wasn't on your watch, but do you bear some responsibility for having well, Commissioner Bovo says it was overpromised.
Let me tell you, the responsibility I bear is having foreseen the traffic mess we have today, and I'm also responsible for having the courage, Michael, to do something about it. Okay? We talk a lot about planning for the future, but planning for the future means you got to have courage. You have to lay out plans that contemplate not only the problems of today, but the problems of tomorrow. And the People's Transportation Plan was a 30-year blueprint, a living, breathing document that could evolve with time, with modern technology. But what it could not afford is to have that money misspent the way it's been misspent for the last 15 years, okay? And it's not just about operations and maintenance. There have been capital expenditures that were not eligible under the People's Transportation Plan either. It's very simple. The People's Transportation Plan meant the following: new money equals new service. New money, new service. And what we've had now for years is the new money going to play for the old service under the guise that we overpromised and misled the voters. Well, folks, listen, even if we did mislead the voters, which we didn't, that does not give anybody the license to use the money any way you want to use it, okay? And I think that, to me, if there's an issue that has motivated me to seek public service again, is to see how that promise of how we were going to use that money has been diverted and shamelessly used for other purposes. For example, you talked about a new dedicated funding source for parks. Right now, Michael, I think we should have no new dedicated funding sources on the table until we start showing the people of Miami-Dade County that we're going to spend the money the way we've been telling them. Until we do that, absolutely not.
Yeah. Commissioner Monestime, mass transit is a huge issue. People who live within your district may be the greatest users of public buses and Metro Rail in Miami-Dade County. So what do you tell them? What can they expect from Mayor Monestime for mass transit?
The first thing I want to tell them is to expect the type of leadership we offered on mass transit, the same type of leadership we offered when I was chairman of the board. Michael, if you remember the conversation regarding the TPO, where the smart plan originated in 2015, is that everybody wanted to get rid of the TPO because it was said that it's quite an effective board. And I was the incumbent chair, and I went to the Miami Herald at the time, and I said, well, can I offer my vision about what I want to do as chair, which is making sure that within the next 6 months to a year, we'll write a plan about how to address our transit issues, and that's exactly where the smart plan came from. So considering that we have a culture of cars, and it takes basically approximately 30 years, according to the expert, to change a culture, we need to move from that conversation from the past to the future. Meaning we need to start building forward right now in regard to transitioning to a mass transit culture. First of all, in order to do that, we need to be a good steward of the current system. We need to promote that system. We need to keep it clean. Though we have few routes, we have to make sure that the headways are always on time. That's the first thing. Yeah. Second, we need to build on our successes that we currently have.
Which are the successes?
We learn that express bus services actually are very popular. So most of these routes, they're very long routes. Let's see if we can have shorter, shorter express routes so that people can get to destination on time. Because the mass transit culture that we're talking about, this is very long term. Yeah. This is very long term. So we need to build the ridership, start creating the culture, and then as we build the ridership, we go about making sure that we show skin in the game as we determine how we raise the funds that we will contribute to whatever the federal government and the state give us for that investment.
Let me jump in, if I may just inject a personal note. As a resident of the great city of Aventura, when that station is built at the Bright Line, and thank you for the $76 million expenditure, I'm going to start riding the train Commissioner Levine Cava, I know it was a big debate, and I think you voted against spending that money that way. But weigh in on the larger subject of mass transit and improving it because it needs improvement.
Yeah, we're not going to solve traffic any other way than world-class transit. And we have really been not investing, and the SMART plan is a SMART plan, but it needs to be smarter. And there are some good things on the horizon, like we have redesigned the bus system, and that's going to have to go to the cities for approval first. It requires that the city trolleys and circulators become more integrated into the countywide plan, and then double it up with express buses. We launched this past week the 836 express bus from the Dolphin Park and Ride. It's cut the travel time in half to downtown. I think it's a great achievement. It's actually the first of the corridors that is moving forward. But at the end of the day, development decisions have been made over decades without regard for infrastructure. And that is why we're in the mess that we're in. If you look at Kendall, South Dade is unfortunately looking like it's moving that direction as well. All of this development with the idea that you pay impact fees, but those impact fees are used someplace else. So, a road could be an F, a failing road. You pay money as a developer for the new development, and there's nothing that you're doing to improve traffic in that location. So basically, as was said, we have to provide transit that is better than sitting in your car and traffic. And, it needs to be something that really will move lots of people, not a few people who can afford an expensive ride downtown.
Thanks. Commissioner Suarez, let's go back to something you said earlier, which is very intriguing, speaks to the whole subject of mass transit. And you said you want to turn Miami-Dade County transportation into a free system. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars is appropriated right now to...
100 million.
100 million?
2% of our general operating budget.
So how
2%
would you pay to do
is
that?
not a big amount. One of my first task force reports to the chairman of the commission on how much money we could save in the county called for $400 million in savings. Folks, we have 4,000 people making over $100,000 in the county. We have 18 administration buildings, 7,000 vehicles, of which 3,500 get to go drive home, and they're not detectives or police officers with patrol cars. I mean, so much that's been said here is 100% correct, but my colleagues are a little bit pessimistic, false promises, or we didn't do this, or we didn't do that. Folks, Commissioner Heyman and I, in sunshine meetings and otherwise, fought to make the FEC line a reality, to have a track access fee, which the mayor failed to negotiate, to the point that now this Aventura station will serve a private train that charges as much as $11 in each direction. So you're going to be paying a lot of money as you take that from Aventura.
Yeah.
Instead,
paying $15 when I go downtown to park. I mean, I would be glad to go.
Instead, but instead, there are success stories. Look at the trolleys, okay? The trolleys are free, okay? If you lived a little closer to, whatever, you probably could take a trolley. 14.5 million people are now taking trolleys. Pretty soon it's going to exceed the entire ridership of the Metro Rail. And the SMART plan can be implemented. Folks, very simple. $3.6 billion total, and thanks Commissioner Monestime with my own son and the TPO that put that together until Jimenez decided that he wasn't going to do it at all. There was no money and trains are obsolete. That's what he said. 100 million can be taken right now from the CITT, from the half cent, and thanks to that extent for putting that together in 2002, although you didn't really stick around to make sure that it was spent correctly, and you didn't help, and no one really, except myself, has helped to make sure that that money is spent correctly. Palmetto Bay has just approved a resolution to intervene in the lawsuit. I took it 3 times to the CITT board, so we spend the money correctly. You can take $100 million right now on day one, the day that I'm elected. I'll identify the $100 million, put it back into the CITT, put it back into the half cent, and $100 million from the MDX. Not counting the auto tag renewal fees, that's $167 million. I have proposed legislation to use at least $50 million of that, and not counting the rest of the money that state spends in Dade County every year, close to $1 billion, mostly to repave highways, drive us nuts on Flagler, drive us nuts on Northwest 7th Avenue, and even Bird. You know, my residents were saying, why are you repaving Bird? And I said, no, I'm having nothing to do with it. They said, your name is up there. I told my staff, block it out. So the solutions are there. That's what I'm about. And if the people are kind of, can I get a clarification? Can we drink this stuff here? I saw Penelas was drinking.
I am.
This is not left over from the last commission meeting or anything.
I am assured.
I always follow my leader here, you know, and he was drinking.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Ms. Barley, talk a little bit about mass transit and your vision for a system that works and less traffic. I mean, just give you one example. Mayor Jimenez has an op-ed article in the Miami Herald today that talks about a new traffic signalization plan, which would be costly, but would apparently cut commute times. Would you favor that?
Well, I don't understand why the mayor is coming up with new programs. Miami-Dade County didn't have this issue with traffic years ago when Arthur Till brought transit to Miami-Dade County. I know that the mayor, he ran his campaign based upon extending the train further down south. And then once he got the position, there was no money all of a sudden. But my plan is to do exactly what he said he was going to do for the residents down south, to extend the train further. And to also work closely with the Mass Transit Administration to bring funding to Miami-Dade County so that we can be able to bring the train down farther down south as he stated he will do.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Commissioner Levine, Cava, on that South Dade Transit Way, I mean, for, I guess, more than a year, there's been a dispute about whether it should be a fancy schmancy Chinese-made trolley that looks like a train, it's really a bus, or should it be hard rail? What do you favor?
No, sir, it's already been decided. It was voted on. It's going to be a bus rapid transit system, and Commissioner Moss and I voted against that in favor of the extension of the Metro Rail. That being said, the bus rapid transit that's been proposed and the RFP is out, we're told that within 2 years that it'll be running. But let me just say, we already added express buses on that busway, transitway, and it increased ridership 30% because you could get from Cutler Bay to Dadeland in 18 minutes. We need to have, and we're building more park and ride facilities. We need to have last mile solutions to get people to those corridors. We are building up the ridership on that corridor, and we need to bring rail because rail is what will bring so many more people and reduce congestion so much more.
Yeah.
But for now, it's bus rapid transit.
Commissioner Bovo, you want to comment?
Yeah, and I think, you know, and this is an issue that I think is problematic when we speak to our residents on these issues. If we're honest and straightforward with them, we could get to where we want to get to. You know, we spoke from the very beginning that you needed to work your way up to be able to get to rail. We all want rail. I've campaigned on rail. I believe rail is not only does it attract more development, it's also more predictable than the buses, but the price tag is unaffordable. The price tag is very difficult to do without state participation. Now, I want to take the South Corridor without federal participation. I do want to take the South Corridor as an example because there was a very heated debate, and many started to opine that we needed to deliver rail. We would be waiting. Our grandchildren may start seeing the fruits of that kind of wait period. That's why we had to do bus in order, not that I wanted to do bus, but you needed to do it in order to build the density. Today, the number was about 18 to 19,000 riders, 19,000 riders per day. In order to qualify for federal funds, you needed to inch that number up to 38,000 riders per day. It wasn't sustainable. You don't have the ridership numbers there. You need to be able to promote some sort of development along the corridor. But you run into a problem when you do that. Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay doesn't want development. They don't want any development in their area. So how do you bring the density? What we can't do, and I think what would be refreshing for all of us as voters and residents of our county is that we just speak straight and clear on these issues. Be transparent and be honest. Our residents have shown over and over and over, if you tell them the truth, they will handle it, they will deal with it, and then they will move forward.
All right, everybody's going to get a second bite at the apple on this because it's very big. Commissioner Monestime, you had a comment?
Yeah, another side of the truth, Michael, is I'm reminded always that if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. This conversation, I believe, is not going in the direction that it should be in order to serve the greater public. Mass transit should be public transit. The way we're going about it right now, it appears that we're going to allow private developers to develop these routes, meaning the cost of these routes, the price of these tickets will continue to increase after the first, second, third year because they're going to continue to have to watch their bottom line. Mass transit throughout the world are subsidized everywhere by government if it will work. And we look at the history of New York, which started with. So in a nutshell, I think the conversation about changing the culture to be in mass transit is the right conversation, but unless we follow the different steps and build it over time and not promise people that we're going to have a mass transit system within the next 4 or 5 years, it can happen. If it happens, it will be completely, totally privatized, and then that's going to be to the detriment of the public because it won't work.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mayor Penelas, I know you wanted to make a comment on this again, too.
Well, I don't even know where to start, to be frank with you. Look, there's a clear divide on that issue on this dais because both Commissioner Cava and Suarez were on the right side of that issue. If there's a quarter where we should have gone rail, and by the way, the choice was not fancy buses or hard rail. There is currently light rail technology that could have been used on that corridor that would have given and provided people of South Dade a one-seat ride all the way to Government Center. Technology that goes from at surface, at grade, no need to elevate, which is substantially less expensive, going onto the tracks at Dadeland and all the way to Government Center. So I want to make that point very clear. But if we're going to be honest and transparent, let's tell people why we didn't have the money to expand Rail South, and that's because we spent the money. And we're doing the numbers internally, but we're up to about $1.8 billion that's misdirected from the People's Transportation Plan to unauthorized uses over the last 15 years. That's why the money doesn't exist. So I think that particular decision, I think made a great disservice to people in South Dade. And then we constantly talk about ridership and federal money, but we tend to be very selective when we use that criteria. Notice that on the Aventura corridor, we're not using ridership and federal criteria. There we've decided to give $76 million. Granted, I think it was a great land deal, but Michael, my dear friend, you could afford the $11 round trip, but the commuters we really need to serve can't afford it. That's not public transportation. Okay, and on the beach corridor, with one of the proposals, the private sector proposal, we're also not talking about ridership because we're not going to involve the federal government. So, to the people of South Dade, imagine how frustrating it is where they see a certain set of circumstances and criteria applied to their rail project while they've been paying every year for the last 16 years a half penny to see different criteria used in other parts of the county because you have certain interests that have come in and proposed certain solutions. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, which in a minute and a half, it's kind of difficult to explain.
It's a little difficult to get your arms around. All right, I don't want to jump around.
The numbers are a little bit different. I thought we were going to get a second chance here.
Well, Mayor Suarez, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, we have received $3.4 billion total from the half cent. We spend maybe $500 million for the proper purposes, capital expansion, which is the orange line. So close to $3 billion misspent, but you're halfway there in your calculations, so that's good.
Well, like you're number one.
Yes, yes. As to the studies, the worst of all, folks, that Commissioner Bovo was referring to, 100% in agreement. Why do we keep doing these studies, you know? The one that was shown to me a couple of weeks ago is for Kendall. And the Kendall corridor is a 9-mile connector that we hope to have between Dadeland and the Turnpike. And they sat there and they told me that it's just going to be more buses and dedicated lanes. And so I said, well, if you're just going to paint some lanes and use existing buses or add a few or whatever, that can't cost very much. They said $250 million. So I said, oh, well, at least you can do it very quickly, right? And they said, yes, by 2032. You know, I'll be on Social Security by then. Hell, I'm already on Social Security. We have the wrong people advising us, we have the wrong people doing studies, and we have government officials that can't make a decision. They look at these demographics, and like Alex says, if you have a solution, whether it involves free public transit to attract more people, to induce more use of public transit, and if you have existing streams of revenues, let's use them, let's use the half cent properly, and let's use the MDX excess revenues, which are also 100 million. I forgot, by the way, the multiplier. The multiplier is 18 to 1. That is the bondable capacity with the county's AAA credit rating that we can get from a stream of revenues.
Let's move on to a huge subject and a huge problem in Miami-Dade County, and that is affordable housing. And Commissioner Levine Cava, this has been, you know, in your wheelhouse. You've worked on affordable housing. I mean, what is the United Way study says something like 40% of the people who are renting are paying
More than half of their income on housing.
More than half of their income on rent. I mean, this simply cannot be sustained. So what, as mayor, what could Miami-Dade County do that it's not doing?
Thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, let's just be clear. Whether it's affecting you directly, it's affecting you nonetheless, because it's, again, affecting the economy. And from my perspective, housing is infrastructure, and we are in an affordability crisis with the numbers that you've just said. It means our children, our grandchildren, our workforce can't afford to live here. It means it's harder to find people to fill our jobs. It means that people are working multiple jobs. They're spending their life commuting in traffic, and so quality of life and mental health are greatly eroded as a result, and people are still struggling to get by. So what can we do? Well, we can treat it truly as a crisis. We have surtax money that's been sitting on the shelf. There are ways to deploy it. We can be looking at lease-to-own programs. We can be taking our county vacant land and putting it into productive use quickly. Right now it dribbles out. Basically at the choice of the commissioner of the district, so it could be bundled and deployed in a more rapid fashion. We could improve the permitting process, because time is money, and so that the housing costs are driven up by that. And we can use building equipment and building methods that cut the costs. So we have to work on all of those methods at the same time. And we need to be producing in the range of 10,000 units per year. We're talking serious units. The city of Miami has doubled down, and Miami-Dade County needs to follow suit, and other cities as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Bovo, as mayor, what would you do to help relieve this housing crisis, especially workforce housing?
Yeah, it's a problem, and part of the problem is that we just don't have enough stock, to be perfectly honest with you. This is an issue of supply and demand. Your rents are going to go high, your price point is going to go higher if you don't have enough stock out there, if you don't have enough supply to meet the demand that's out there. And the market's already been reflecting this by the garages that are turned into apartments, which is not a model for development, clearly. You know, a garage being rented for $1,200 a month, you know, it's just unacceptable, and it's not just in my community. Hialeah used to be, unfortunately, the poster child for this. This is all over the county, and we've walked in different places all over the county where now folks are starting to buy these homes with the vision of cutting it in half so they could rent the other side of their home. That's unacceptable. Look, I think definitely cutting red tape and regulations is extremely important. I think we could work with developers on our county-owned land to encourage workforce housing, or at least stock that's affordable for workforce, provided that we bring utilities to the property, provided that we cut some of this red tape in exchange for. Now, as I said earlier, we need to look at our corridors and develop along our corridors. The more development that we do along those corridors, that, believe this, it could possibly happen where some could actually part with their cars if they live close enough to a corridor. You take the car out of somebody's equation as far as monthly payments, you may be able to help them get into something that might be more affordable. But no problem. It's something that needs to be addressed from various points. We need the state to be able to participate and make sure that funds are available for us to be able to support those that are building for low income and workforce housing. But building is critically important. Stymieing development, and we hear it at the board many times. All of us have seen it where folks come to us and say, build, but not in my neighborhood. And it happens over and over and over again. And unfortunately, as you push it out to different areas, you have a UDB that takes 10 votes to move. Very difficult. But I think cutting regulations and encouraging building where you can is something we should be doing.
Yeah. Commissioner Monestime, one example of, I think, a successful public-private partnership when it comes to housing has been Liberty Square between related companies and Miami-Dade County HUD. And, you know, the people who were living in those terrible substandard 1937 buildings and now are living, many of them, in really lovely apartments. And that's a success story. There aren't very many. How do you create more success stories?
This is, you can say this is a relative success story in the sense that, of course, you needed to transform that neighborhood. You wanted to have a cleaner place, a better environment to build. But however, what's affecting people the most are two things. Median income in Miami-Dade County is 20% lower than national average, whereas the cost of living in Miami-Dade County is 15% higher than national average. So you have a 35% gap right there. So the only way you solve that issue is not just by building more units, but it's by making families and working individuals more financially sustainable. Give them an opportunity to do two things. If they need a second job, that they can get training for it. But like Commissioner Bovo says, that you also develop these units, maybe smaller units, maybe units that is closer to their employment, maybe units that is developed closer to one thing I'm suggesting, for example, we have a scarcity of land. We need to partnership with the school board. We need to build a partnership with the school board.
To build, would you be in favor? I mean, the school board has talked about building housing units for teachers
on their sites,
on school property.
We can do the same thing with religious organizations. There are two entities in Miami-Dade County that own most of the land right now. Developable land I'm talking about. The school board, religious organizations. So we partner with them. We develop more housing. We also talk to large employers, see how much more housing we can bring to their sites, and we tweak our code within the urban core to make sure that we imagine and we design the way we build so that we can offer more unit, but also if you can have an oversupplied in the market, but if people are still making the same dollar that they're making today, tomorrow, they won't be able to do. So it's got to be sustainable across the board.
Into higher pay as well. Mayor Penelas, let's weigh in here on affordable housing. It was a problem during your 8 years as mayor. It's a problem now.
I'm happy to. In fact, as you may know, since I've been in the private sector, a company that I own has provided affordable and workforce housing to thousands of families in this community, and we've done it with zero government help, zero.
How'd you do it?
We did it by investing our money, private money, buying at the right time, investing in those units, but more importantly, what it's taught me is the fact that we talk a lot about developing new units, which we have to, and I agree with everything Commissioner Bovo and Cava, Commissioner Monestime have said in terms of moving the regulatory process. It's got to be quicker, partnering with municipal, county, school board, land opportunities. But what we're missing here, and Commissioner Bovo, I thought you were going to elaborate on this when you talked about the stock. You're absolutely right. There is existing affordable housing stock that is in the hands of private investors, which we are losing at a much more rapid rate than we are constructing new. People like me, who have very low bases in our assets, are being basically tempted by international investors to sell at extraordinarily high prices, which then, of course, result in those assets no longer being affordable. So while I was in the business at the time of buying below replacement value, right, value-added opportunities, high vacancy rates, where you had to stabilize the property over a year, you would invest a lot of your money, you'd get interest-only loans from banks. That model worked for me. But for the new developer now, that model doesn't work any longer, although interest rates are going down. We've got to find a way of incentivizing the purchasers of the existing affordable housing stock to maintain it affordable. Jacksonville, for example, has a program where they recognize that one of the big beneficiaries when you trade hands, when properties trade hands, are local governments, because the assessments go up, and even if you keep the millage rate the same way, you're obviously your tax receipts are much higher, returning a larger portion of that increase back to the private sector purchaser to make the improvements, to convert maybe a C- property into a C+ or a B- property. Those are the kind of innovative things we need to do. We're so focused on development. The other thing I've learned in the private sector, Michael, it's difficult for government to build an 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, one bath apartment for less than $250,000. That's not sustainable in the private sector. I'd be bankrupt. I would be bankrupt if my bases on multifamily property was $250,000 a door. So why is it that it costs so much more for the public sector to do this and the private sector to do it? So we've got to be careful with these partnerships. And who we're picking to do these partnerships with, because they may be very good, reputable, but they're depending on tax credits. They're depending on all these things. They're taking longer to develop, and at the end of the day, is it costing you $250,000 a unit? Those are the kinds of issues that I'm concerned with, that I think I have a unique experience in.
Well, you do. Yeah, you do indeed. Commissioner Suarez, this has been a subject you've talked about for years. So how would you widen the available housing stock and make it more affordable for school teachers, for people who are a clerk at the county or a retail salesperson?
Let me just say that that dissertation on conventional financing of housing was very interesting. Nothing to do with the topic, which is how we in government are going to do it. But I do want to invest in this company because apparently it's doing pretty well. Folks, we are giving right now all of the companies in the stock market, we're lending money to them at 1.25%, as the federal government is doing. The monetary base, the money that is given to them, is $3 trillion at last count. We're not doing that at the local level, but we have done it. And Commissioner Levine, Cava, and I push for at least 1% of our general operating budget. That's $50-some million. That duplicates the effort. Don't believe when you hear Jimenez say, oh, we have $250 million. That's carryover from money that we haven't spent in other years. We get about $50 million from the federal government and the different programs. We add $50 million. That duplicates our effort. That gets us to about 2,000. Not quite the 10,000 that we're talking about in the Housing Committee. He mentioned, Commissioner, former Mayor, what's your last name again? Penelas. Said, land opportunities. Folks, we have 4,500 properties owned and leased by the county. In the city of Miami, we made available that land that we had. Somehow it all turns up whenever there's a baseball team or a soccer team or somebody that wants to use our properties. But there's 4,500 properties. At my first Sunshine meeting, I think, was with Commissioner Sally Heyman to discuss that. And we apply substantial funds. We get the state to pick up the catastrophic insurance, and the PITI that he's so familiar with, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, can be reduced. We also need to increase the homestead exemption. Don't believe those people that say the government can't function without that homestead exemption.
How much?
Oh, at least $75,000. That should be that. It was started in 1979 at 20. It was set at 25,000. You know why? That was the average price of a home in the state of Florida. That doesn't mean anything here. And you can do an equation, as we did in the city of Miami, where people were able to buy their homes at Melrose and Rio Plaza and East Little Havana for $350 a month, PITI. We can do it. It'll be a little bit higher now. It'll be about 750, the figure that he used, for about a 750 square foot unit with 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. So it can be done, and it will be done under my administration.
Yeah. Ms. Barley, surely, I mean, you are in your 30s, I believe, and I don't know your financial situation, but I know people in their 30s. When I was in my 30s, you know, I certainly struggled to pay a mortgage, and so what would you say to the people of your contemporaries in Miami-Dade County, you know, who would like a program to make living easier and more affordable?
I believe the crisis of affordability in Miami-Dade County starts with our leaders. Why bring in developers when you already have existing public housing? Why not invest into the public housing instead of trying to get rid of the public housing?
Where are they trying to get rid of public housing?
Liberty Square?
Explain to me how they're trying to get rid of it. That's not my
It's not
understanding.
a 100% public housing. It's private and some public, but
Well, that's how they've made it. Excuse me, I'm not an expert, but as it was explained to me by the people at Dr. Liu and by George Perez, that by creating both private equity owners and people whose housing was subsidized was the only way to build it.
well, again, my question is why not invest into the public housing that's there?
Well, it is an investment. It's just a shared investment with private investors. But you don't like that.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
And I also want to ask Commissioner Monestime, do you know in your district that the public housing, the county workers that comes and do the inspections, they are passing inspections that really supposed to be failed inspections? Are you aware of that in your district?
I would like you to share that information with me after this meeting and give me names and addresses where I can, together with my staff, follow up to make sure that if there is such incidents, that we address the administration and make sure that it's corrected.
All right, we are, and I haven't even gotten to a lot of good questions, I apologize, but we are getting towards the end before we have the closings. I have a couple of just, in a sense, personal questions I would like to ask the candidates. Ms. Levine Cava, I've known you for years. I knew you when you were a social worker and, you know, a lawyer. And I'm thinking back, as I was driving here this evening, thinking back to 1984 as a younger reporter, when Ruth Shack ran for mayor of then Dade County against Stephen P. Clark. And I happen to think that Ruth Shack was one of the most eminently qualified public servants I had ever known. And I can say here, I don't normally talk about who I vote for. I voted for Ruth Shack, would have been proud to have had her as the mayor. So I guess my question, I'm sorry for its being convoluted, is Miami-Dade County ready to vote for you and for a woman for mayor?
I believe that this audience right here is ready to vote for a woman mayor. Yes, I do, for sure. You know, it is the year of the woman. I like to say it will keep being the year of the woman until we get it right. And when I go, out and talk to the public, they are very, very ready. You know, the men have tried it, and you know, things aren't going quite the way they'd like. And I have to tell you that the men are as receptive, if not more so, than the women.
Thank you. And Commissioner Monestime, I've known you for many years, and respect the work you have done and respect your life story. And I believe in my heart that Miami-Dade County is a fair-minded community that would look upon a man born in Haiti who has done what you have done as, yes, I could vote for him as mayor, but I think that there may be some people who would say, well, yeah, he's okay, but you know, do I really want a Haitian American to be my mayor? What would you say to that person?
I would say to that person, is he or she, as I believe Miami-Dade County, is looking for a competent, qualified, and experienced mayor who basically understand the issues and challenges that will affect Miami-Dade County for years to come. And if that's what Miami-Dade County is looking for, I believe these individuals would take a look at my candidacy and consider me and vote for me. I'm most proud of the fact that we have a pool of very competent candidates running for this seat.
True.
And to be sitting here in the midst of two former mayors and two county commissioners who are both my colleagues currently, and a young person who actually has the intelligence, the determination, and the passion to contribute to this conversation, I think the future of Miami-Dade County is bright, and I look forward to serving as mayor, because when that choice is made and I'm elected mayor of Miami-Dade County, I will make every single person in this room and in this entire county proud.
Very nice.
Well said. Ms. Barley, I have to ask you, people generally vote, you know, for a candidate who has experience, who is shown as a track record, who can say, I did this or I did that in public life, examine my record. You're running for the highest office in Miami-Dade County, a nearly $9 billion budget, huge workforce of, what, 23,000 people? I mean, how many?
28,000.
28,000. And you do not have that government experience. What do you say to somebody who says, well, you're, as Commissioner Monestime has just said, you're bright, you're capable, you look like you could be a very fine public servant. Why don't you start running for a county commission seat rather than mayor? What do you say to somebody who says that?
My response to that, when I first announced that I was running for Miami-Dade County, someone wrote to me on Facebook and stated why you didn't go out for state representative.
Okay.
My answer to them was, if your child come to you and say, Mom, Dad, I want to be a doctor, would you say, don't be a doctor, go out for a CNA? So I reach for the stars. I go for the gusto. And I know in Miami-Dade County, they're looking for something different, basically. And even though I don't have the government experience, so I wasn't there physically, but I was always working in the campaign with my father and my other relatives. So I learned from them.
I get you.
So I'm going to take my experience and I'm going to continue to fight to run for Miami-Dade County, whether having that government experience or not.
Reach for the stars. I like it. Mayor Penelas, I covered you when you were the mayor, and you know, you have to put up with people like me, and I see Doug Hanks over here and from the Miami Herald, and you know, being in the public eye is not always an easy thing, and you got skewered from time to time. So I guess my question would be, why do you want to come back and do this again?
It's all about the service, Michael. I love this community. This is the community that embraced my family when they immigrated to this country, gave them opportunity, allowed them to raise my brothers and I, allowed me to go to law school, to become the youngest person ever elected in the city of Hialeah, the youngest person ever elected to the Board of County Commissioners, the youngest mayor ever at age 34. And I've reached a point in my life where this is not about escalating in my political career. This is not about taking the next step in the political ladder. I've done that. It's about providing service is about being able to tackle the challenges that we have and not beholden to any interests or beholden to any particular views, only the views that I think are in the best interest of this community. So when you reach a certain level in your life, you're liberated. You're really liberated just to do what you think is right. And that's where I am in life. I'd be much better off at home. My wife would rather I not do this. Let's be very clear. She thinks I am insane for doing this. But we've been called to service. And this is not about a pay raise. It's not about, the next job. It's about giving back to this community and doing it in a way just like the community is given to me and to my family. That's why I choose. If the people of this county honor me with their vote, I will proudly serve them again as their leader. And if not, I'll be very happy at home as well. We have an 8-year-old at home who we love spending time with, and I leave it in God's hands. It's whatever God wants, that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Suarez, I can almost ask you the same question because of your long service, City of Miami, Miami-Dade County, and also I would say you are intriguing to me and to everybody else because you are really a public intellectual. I mean, you wrote a book that tried to sort of advance Alexis de Tocqueville. There aren't very many people, who think they can improve upon de Tocqueville. I'm not sure you did, but you certainly tried. So why are you running for mayor?
Well, sometimes people say maybe you've been at this a little too long and maybe you're getting a little tired or something. And then I think of the movie Scent of a Woman where they say to, I guess it's Al Pacino, are you finished, sir? And he goes, no, I'm just getting warmed up. So there's a lot of things that need to be done in Miami-Dade County and that have not been done properly. There's a lot of truths that need to be said. There's a lot of solutions that need to be put forward. And I want to identify a couple of people that are in the audience to sort of illustrate that. I also surround myself with the right people. Jeff Watson was my assistant when he ended up as number 2 in the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs in the White House. Jeff can tell you the obstacles that we ran into when I was elected in 1985. Chris Norwood is back there. When I came up with the idea of the summer jobs programs, which Commissioner Monestime kind of exaggerated a little bit what we did, but we're not at 10,000 yet, but that is the goal. We are at 2,700, and he made it happen with, well, maybe if you include all the other programs in the county. But he did the analysis for us of how important it is to reduce crime among young people. It is when they have a job. So I guess I surround myself with all the right people, and then sometimes when I have the wrong person next to me, I make sure they don't get elected in the next election. I did that one time with Joe Carollo, but we won't go into that today.
Oh. We will skip Joe Carollo tonight.
Or I can tell you more if you
Commissioner Bovo, I admired the work you did in the state legislature. You were really first-rate state representative for Hialeah, and I don't know where that might have led you except to the Miami-Dade County Commission. Here you are, and you've served 8 years. Why do you want to be the mayor now?
Are we at closing statements, or?
No, you're still going to have a close.
Okay, just
simple question.
Michael, I come from a community that lost it all, and in losing everything, they found home in the United States, and this is a land of opportunity. This is a land that doesn't guarantee you anything, but does guarantee you an opportunity. And I have been the benefactor of being raised in South Florida, and it's a community that I not only love. I want my children to be raised here. I have 5 children, yet one of them now lives in New York, and that's, it's frustrating because you want your kids close, and I want to make sure that, opportunities that I had are there for not just my kids, but for a generation of children to be able to not look outside of Miami-Dade County for their fame and fortune. And, for a long time, I have felt that at the levels of county government, there has been a lot of corruption. There has been a lot of insider deals and cronyism. And, it drives me to be able to want to run and know that in my entire political career, there's not one lobbyist out there that could claim I've got his vote. Because I've never sold my vote, never sold my integrity throughout the entire time that I've been, whether a council member, a state representative, or a county commissioner. And to me, one of the things that's been the most frustrating for residents in our community is that they feel that their local government is for sale.
Well, thank you for those personal statements, and now closings of a minute. And Monique, Nicole, Barley, you will go first. You have a minute.
Okay. My closing statement, I don't know if you guys know when my father, Roy Hardiman, when he continued to run for state representative, he ran since I was in elementary school. I'm 36 years old. His first win was in 2016. In 2016, guess who was his campaign manager and helped him win? It was me. So I do have that experience. So when you think of affordability, fairness, think of Barley. Thank you.
Thank you. And Xavier Suarez.
Quick story, how things can get done if you have the right person doing them. Just when the people mover extensions were being proposed, UMTA, the Mass Transit Authority, indicated to us that it would cost $14 per person per mile to build that system. And so I called Mayor Clark and I said, can I go to the economic impact statement hearings on behalf of the county and the city? And he would always defer to me. And so I did. And I got up there and I said, you guys have the right denominator, you have the right cost element, but you have the wrong numerator. You have the wrong number of passengers that are going to use this. You're off by a factor of 10. When I walked out, one of my staff said, where'd you get that number? And I said, I pulled it out of the sky and I threw it out there. And you know what? Now we have a lot more than 10 times what they said was going to be the ridership. Don't let the bureaucrats convince you. If you make free transit, public transit, really public, affordable, accessible, and use the right vehicles. Commissioner Bovo was right. People don't like those big old buses as much as they like the trolleys, and they like vehicles that look like trains. So make them look like trains. Do whatever. But get people out of their cars and make public transit available, and that's half of the equation. The other half, of course, is affordable housing. We've already talked about that, and I think I can make those things happen in this county. And thank you again for this forum, Mike, and your perceptive questions, even if you asked me all the hard questions.
Thank you very much. John Monestime, your close.
Thank you, Michael. First, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and I want to thank you, Michael, for this, for moderating this this debate. Yes, my life has been about overcoming obstacles. I came here nearly 40 years ago as a 17-year-old boy with nothing, zero, no mom, no dad here. I had to put myself through school. I had to make ends meet. I work at Big Old Nash on 125th Street, Biscayne, washing dishes. My first job was at Krispy Kreme Donut as a 17-year-old boy. And I drove a cab. I mopped floors, overcoming obstacles. When I dated my wife, the father thought I wasn't good enough because, frankly, I didn't have much. But I promised him and I promised his wife that I was going to do good by their daughters. We've now been married 33 years, and I've raised 2 sons. When I first started a small business, I had $58 in the bank. And I didn't have first month, last month. I ran to the landlord's office almost every day to convince him to give me 1 month, the first month, and I would pay him that first month at the end of the lease. After 3 times, he was convinced, and he allowed me to rent there. Till today, that business is still open. Am I still struggling? Yes. I'm struggling because I'm about paying back to my community. the community that has built me up. When I first became chairman of the board, everyone thought I was going to fail. But one of the reasons why I'm encouraged every day to run for mayor, though it's challenging to raise money, it's challenging to go from Miami Gardens to Florida City, is because people are reminded that I was fair. I had a good heart, and I took care of the people around me when I was chairman of the county commission. If you give me the opportunity to serve as mayor of Miami-Dade County, I will make you proud, because I will be working for you. You will be my employer, and my job is to watch after this county each and every day, because what this county has given me this far is a whole lot more that I came here for, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Mayor Penelas?
Well, Michael, first of all, thank you
You're
to
quite
the
welcome.
organizers, Sunny Isles Beach, and for being our host, and to my colleagues here for their attendance. You know, to a great extent, we need to be practical about this decision. The mayor of Miami-Dade County manages a $9 billion budget, 26,000 employees. Okay, this is a serious business. And the decision that voters need to make is who's best equipped at this particular moment to deal with the challenges that we face. My whole life has been about dealing with challenges. From the first day I arrived at the county, when I wasn't allowed to use county resources to speak to my constituents in Spanish because we had an anti-bilingual ordinance, okay? Challenges to amend our human rights ordinance to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation. Issues that were not popular in the 90s, okay? Reforming county government so government would look more like the people we represent. Real challenges. Dealing with homelessness and the Homeless Trust. When we knew that early education was a good investment, I led the statewide effort to provide a constitutional amendment for universal pre-K. Real leadership and real results. You look at the issues we've been talking about today, crumbling water and sewer infrastructure, very little, if any, improvement on transportation, a huge affordability gap in this community. These are real issues. What's happened in the last 10 or 15 years? Because these issues haven't happened overnight. And who's best equipped to meet those challenges in the future? So the case I'm going to make to the people of Miami-Dade County is I'm the right leader right now with the experience that I have both in the public and the private sector, not looking to extend my political career, but looking to serve the people and address this community. Because just like I left the county 16 years ago, a safer, cleaner, and more prosperous place, once again, I commit to you that I will leave this county a safer, cleaner, and more prosperous place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Commissioner Levine Cava.
Thank you. You know, we live in paradise, but there's trouble in paradise. And we have an opportunity to take a new course. And I urge you, seize it. The politics of old were insider controlled. Are you ready to move from status quo to real change? Are you ready to give up the politics of the past and move to a future that has integrity, that brings honesty and real results? If so, I'm your candidate. I'm the newest elected official on this stage. I spent 40 years in this community leading both small and large organizations. I created hundreds of jobs, but public's distrust in government led me to want to step inside. And in my 5.5 years in county government, I have delivered real results. I've created real public trust. As an activist and now as an elected leader, I've always led the same way, bringing people together, the business community, the nonprofit sector, everyday residents, to solve problems together and develop real public will to solve the pressing challenges of the day. So if you're ready for real change, if you're ready to usher in a new era, I'm your candidate. Thank you very much for your support.
And Commissioner Bovo.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for all of you that have come out tonight and all the folks participating. And I would remind all of us that the reason we engage county government is to provide service. Police, fire, water and sewer, fixing of our streets, picking up our garbage is the main purpose that we've engaged county business and county government. Yet over a course of time, we've seen our county drift further and further away from the core mission it should be delivering to our residents, engaging itself in to try to fix everything for everybody in our county. And I would tell you that's where we then fail on the basic issues that we should be fixing or addressing. As your mayor, I pledge that we will put the taxpayer first. We will put business owners who create so many jobs in our community first. We will make sure that county business, county services are at the core of what our county should be. Not that social issues are not important, but the further away we get from the business of the county, the further away we get, the more danger that we find ourselves in. As your mayor, I pledge to you not only to put them first, but work in a very transparent way. You will get straight up honesty. The days of corruption and friendships and insider deals will end the day that I become mayor. You will not need to elect a police officer after my reign as mayor, because we will work in a transparent way. Thank you all for paying attention. Thank you all for being here tonight, and may God bless our county.
And thank you all so much. And to my friend Norman Edelcup, thank you for being a great mayor here. Thank you.
Michael, thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, all your debaters, and I thank each and every one of you for coming. Thank you.